For those of you joining us for the first time, as you can see, I like to bring everyone on camera so we can just have a conversation. So I'm going to invite you to join, and you can decline if you are shy or driving or whatever, but if you choose to come on, you're welcome to do so. So Marina, go ahead and take yourself off mute. And I have Sean Smith to thank for our introduction. He said that you're the person to ask about biocompatibility, and your title is Biocompatibility, Naughty or Nice? And I'm thinking, well, it needs to be biocompatible, so it's got to be nice. When is it naughty?
Actually, there are several cases when it can be naughty, but I do believe that it depends on who looks into it. If you don't mind, I prepare several slides, so let me share them. Yeah, just a second. Hopefully this one, share. Okay. So let me start with introduction. Who am I? A bit, just a couple of words. So my name is Marina Daineko, and I am biocompatibility subject matter expert. I have my master's science degree in analytical chemistry. Also, I have expertise in biocompatibility as well as design control. I am EU MDR practitioner specializing in patient-friendly gadgets and have like roughly more than 9 years in life science and healthcare, and what is even more important than still counting and loving it. So I would like to start this conversation and discussion, and I really encourage you to interrupt me and ask questions or like some clarifications. Don't be shy. I loved talking about biocompatibility. So let's start with this question, and I'm really intrigued to know whether you believe that there are such things as biocompatible materials. I do believe that you can use chat here and just please put A, B, C. A for yes, there are such things as biocompatible materials. B, no, no way. And C, you are not sure or you need some more information, clarification, whatsoever. So please, I could see the first answers.
4-1 A versus B. And then we have it depends on the situation from the design engineer. So,
well, I got a question about the question. Does it mean that the materials are inherently biocompatible, or does it mean that like to regulators they will acknowledge that they're biocompatible?
This question is with focus on the material, whether, for instance, if we consider some stainless steel, is it for sure biocompatible for all the cases, for all the medical devices, taking into consideration all possible approaches and manufacturing processes? So, yeah, no, I really like the answer. Thank you.
It was a trick question, but okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a trick question. So, yeah, so let's jump into definition. What is actually biocompatibility? If we can see the definition, biocompatibility is defined as ability of a device material to perform with an appropriate host response in a specific situation. But what it actually means? It means that when we have, for instance, patient that has tissues, bones, etc., and we have our medical device with specific material, so it depends and actually how, when, how long this medical device has contact with our patient. And we have to consider all possible aspects here, right? Not only like material, like a standalone material without understanding the tissue, the patient response on this material, but all together. For example, if we take this stainless steel, right? So it's pretty known that some specific types of stainless steel can be used for instance, for surgery, right? And it can be used for centuries. But if we can have a look into some specifics, like for instance, manufacturing processes. And if we have, for instance, cleaning processes, we have to be sure that there is no residuals, no additional risk to these materials that can be introduced into our patient. And that's why it's very important. By default, we can't say that, for instance, this titanium is for 100% biocompatible. No, unfortunately, it doesn't work. We have to consider, first of all the possible processes that can alter this material, but also and surely its interaction with tissue, bone, blood. It depends on the contact. And when we think from this perspective, we can jump into specifics actually here, right? So basic of biocompatibility. Let's discuss what shall be assessed here. According to current ISO 10993-1, the biocompatibility shall be performed for each medical device that come into direct or indirect contact with human body. And quite a lot of people are a bit confused about this, like what does it mean, direct or indirect contact? And here you may see I prepared using ChatGPT several pictures to demonstrate it. Direct contact means that the medical device has actually touched the skin, for instance, or tissue or blood. So it means like direct contact. And indirect contact here, you may see infusion set and this bag, right? And this liquid is stored within this bag, and then during treatment, this liquid goes directly to the patient. So, and here, this bag can be classified as indirect contact, right? Why? Because some chemicals may just simply go from this material of the bag to the liquid and then directly to the patient. And this indirect contact is not only liquid, but also gas. So we have to consider both medical devices that have direct as well as indirect contact. And both of them shall be assessed whether they are biocompatible, actually, that they are biologically safely, it's better to say here. Then if we go into next topic, not topic, but step or phrase, like, okay, we now can understand that medical devices shall be assessed, but how to assess them? Actually, there are several standards, quite a lot of standards, to be honest, and I would like to start with ISO 14971. I do believe that you know the standard very well because it's about risk management process. And actually, biological evaluation is part of this risk management process. And even I do believe also that you are pretty aware that right now ISO 10993-1 is under revision, under like very hot discussion, and it's planned to be published this year. So this newly revised version has even more focus on risk management activities. So that's why this standard is very important, and the workflow, how to assess risk, how to elicitate them, so on so forth, was just simply taken from this ISO 14971 into newly updated 10993. So first thing to understand that we have to use risk management process and assess biological safety in the frame of this risk management process. Then we have ISO 10993 suite, and here there are quite a lot of standards, more than 20. So you can imagine how many aspects are covered. And yeah, so like for instance, as I said, -1 is a primary standard, basic one that shall be used for assessment because it sets up the process and also expectations. But some other dashes, specific one, like for instance, -17 about toxicological risk assessment, -18 regarding chemical characterization, -2 regarding animal welfare. So quite a lot of readings here. But and actually this ISO 10993-1 serves as baseline for evaluations across the world. So it's not a secret that each country or even each region can use the standard or create their regulations or rules based on specific standards. So the same story here, and it's very good illustrated in the FDA guidance for ISO 10993-1 usage, because ISO 10993-1 was taken as a baseline here, but also there are some differences between what FDA is required for biocompatibility versus what is notified body here in Europe are required for it. Also, there are some specific standards here, and I also have to mention them, like for instance, ISO 18562 suite, because there are several ones for breathing gas pathway, as well as for dentistry, ophthalmic optics, and even more. So quite a lot of readings here, and it's very interesting or not. or nice. So it depends on what do you like actually, right? So also I would like to talk about what factors shall be assessed in the terms of biocompatibility. So here it's important to notice that first of all, nature of contact. We have to answer the question with which tissues does the device or part of the device come into contact? Because look, recently, like September last year, for me it's still recently, FDA guideline on ISO 10931 usage has been updated, and a new appendix appeared here for specifically materials or devices that have direct contact with intact skin. So they can be categorized as low risk, and there are not so many risks that can be associated with this medical device. Let me put in this way for simplification. For instance, new current version, not current, but proposed update to ISO 10931 also stating that medical devices that have direct contact with intact skin can be categorized as low risk, and it means that, yeah, we still have to do biological evaluation, but their risks as well as coverage, this risk, let me put it as the risk associated with such medical devices are not so high. So there is different level of evaluation here. Also type of the contact, is there direct or indirect contact, because it would vary. Also frequency and duration of contact, because surely just imagine, I'm chemist actually originally, as I mentioned in the beginning, and I have got allergy on nickel when I was working in chemical lab. So, but I have never had this nickel allergy, and I have just got it when I was working like 2 or 3 years every day with nickel. So actually, you know, duration of contact matters, and that's why it's very important to understand whether it's short-term or transitory contact or it's long-term. And here we have to remember about cumulative use. And also here I put materials because actually there are a lot of questions of materials and a lot of information that shall be analyzed here. So we actually need to understand what is our medical device made of, how it works, how the manufacturing processes alter the materials. And I have very funny situations when, for instance, clients share the information with me and I'm double checking like, okay, I got the point, but do you have cleaning process? And they were like, yes, we have, but how do you know? Just because of experience, you know, because there are some manufacturing processes and it may not be described somewhere, but looking into the data, into the information, you can understand, like, you know, the detective kind of, that, okay, something more is used here, and surely it shall be investigated and analyzed within biological evaluation.
Sonali asked if you
yeah.
would provide your views on the contact category, that is indirect or non-patient contacting, to be considered for an instrument that comes in contact with an implant, transient or greater than 24 contact duration.
Yeah, actually it's very important, and surely it has to be considered. And as you mentioned, it's not only the instruments that can touch the implant, but also there can be some cross-contamination if manufacturing line is used for several medical devices. So, you know, all these things shall be considered. But going back to your question, to your statement, and to direct or indirect contact, obviously it shall to be considered. Plus additionally, if for instance medical device is used with some accessory, it also shall be considered, right, and mentioned within biological evaluation. Moreover, for instance, why we are assessing packaging, again, because packaging can contact our medical device, and some chemicals can go to the patient actually. So all these aspects shall be considered. And from my experience, I worked with some 3D implants, and you know, using 3D printing, and it's in medical devices as well as from biocompatibility point of view is I don't like novel, but new manufacturing processes, you know, and we assessed all the forms, all the shapes that were used for production of these implants. Yeah, that's indeed important. Thank you for noticing it. And I could say, yeah.
My question was along the same line as the other question because I'm dealing with a manufacturer who didn't control their supply. So they had 4 or 5 different supplies for a pouch that went over the top of an implant that could be up to 5 years in that pouch. And it's inside a sterile barrier. And they never did biocompatibility with any supplier or whatever. How much trouble are they in with the FDA?
A lot. If a nutshell, a lot. And to be honest, yeah, actually, I love it's nice type of biocompatibility for me, but can be naughty for 100% for someone else, because biocompatibility, it's not standalone or, you know, like in a balloon process. No, it's incorporated into company quality management system. And there are such processes as risk assessment, as change management, as supply management, and some others that shall be controlled to succeed in biocompatibility. And that's like mind-blowing sometimes for me, to be honest, because look, like first part of your question regarding supply control, here, like there are a lot of topics actually to cover this only with supply management, suppliers control, because surely the company who is manufacturer is responsible on whole medical device, right? So first of all, we need to be sure what materials are used and whether there are some changes in these materials, because suppliers from time to time, they have, like, for instance, I don't know if you're talking about polymer, they can state that, okay, we don't produce this polymer anymore, but here is almost the same, just, you know, a slight change, and that's it. But from Biocom point of view, we have to assess whether these polymers are equivalent and whether there are any additional risk introduced here, and we have to assess it from biological point of view. So supply controls means that the company is informed about such changes, and it's very important. Another topic, for instance, just imagine that we have medical device, it's like, I don't know, 20 years on the market, right? No changes in materials, just for instance, it can be surgical scissors, right? And no changes in materials, no changes in manufacturing processes, and we can like we have historical testing, we have all the information in place, but also we can like additional point to justify that that this evaluation is still applicable, because we have to do periodic review here. I will talk about it later. Is to say that, okay, we have incoming control of material, and we are, and like the materials are the same as it is documented in our material specification. So that's why it's also important to have here. And yeah, if there are several suppliers, it's also okay. And for instance, when I'm dealing with such situations, there are, as a rule of thumb, there is such some there are some backup materials or slightly different materials from different suppliers. So all these are assessed and evaluated into biological evaluation plan and report. So I don't know whether I answered your question or if you have some.
Well, and just for people to know here, the company has been banned from selling products in the US and Europe and have a hefty fine on them too. And that's because they didn't pay attention to their packaging, guys. So that's my thing, is packaging.
It always come down to it. Always
Yeah.
comes to this young lady.
And from my experience, actually, FDA is very curious about packaging, and they are asking a lot of questions about especially primary packaging, and especially if their instruments or medical devices are classified like class 2, A, B, or 3. So, you know, they are especially interested. So there might be some questions here.
Marina, I temporarily suspended your presentation because there are a few questions and we can see one better. Kevin, you had your hand up and then you took it down. Did you have something?
I took it down because I need to jump off in like 1 minute here, but I was kind of curious, you know, in a case like that example, looking at the risk assessment, you know, for something like with what Jan did, what does that entail to basically bring that in line? I mean, if you're looking at something in that case, like, you know, a polymer sleeve that's going over, can you do an assessment just on the polymer, or do you have to actually, you know, redo stability on the material, on the full product with packaging? Do you have to redo biocompatibility tests? You know, how thorough does that risk assessment have to be if you have a change?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And what both like FDA and FDA guidance and ISO 10993 are stating that if in a nutshell, it depends. Look, we have the change, and surely we have to assess, like, first of all, what is this change and how how is it impacted other areas around it. And within FDA guidance, there is a very cool example when like one material was changed and it shall be heated to another one, you know, but the heating process as well as the properties of another material shall be assessed as well in terms of biocompatibility. So here my answer is that first of all, the change itself shall be assessed like properly, whether there are any additional risk, right? So here is the focus on highlight on additional risk. And second, whether some other materials, I don't know, for instance, we can have some leachables, right? So we need to understand what is the impact on these leachables into another material. If, for instance, we have even the change in the components that have no contact with the patient at all, we still have to understand whether there is any impact on the component that has contact with the patient, you know, from this another component that doesn't. So I wouldn't say that all biological evaluation tests shall be repeated, or not biological but extractables and leachables shall to be done, but but it actually depends on the nature of the change and whether other conclusions from previously done testing are still applicable, you know, because we have to consider also standards change, maybe, yeah, like this.
All right, thanks, Marina.
Yeah,
Welcome.
and it's terrible to say it depends.
Before you jump off, Kevin, how's your search? You were looking for a consulting assignment, or
yeah, actually, that's what I got. I got to jump off for an 11:30 call with somebody on that. So
right,
I'll actually maybe give you a call next week, Joe.
all right, I'd like that. Thank
All right,
you.
thanks.
Yeah,
And
thank you very
Richard,
much.
you wrote me a note about something you'd like Marina to explore. Would you share that with the class?
Yeah, so you're asking.
Certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Marina, hi. I work predominantly software advice, but I've had to do a little bit of biocompatibility testing where the manufacturer's produced a wearable, or there's been a kind of companion product. The particular example I'm thinking of is where they've had to kind of breathe into effectively a breathalyzer that then gives you some information back into your iPhone. And so it's a little bit out of my expertise, but I kind of would appreciate your view on whether it's reasonable to rely on kind of material sheet specifications, or whether there's actually a hard line that you need to do biocompatibility testing on a finished product. But simply because I was put in a kind of that awkward grey position, and it seems to be that the answer varies depending upon your notified body or your geography. So, and the risk profile perhaps.
Yeah, but we are talking about wearable, right? Wearables that has direct contact with intact skin only, right?
Yeah, so it wasn't implantable, but it was kind of, in both instances, it was devices that, you know, would have a relatively long-term contact with the skin. And kind of the initial approach of the manufacturer, as you'd expect, was let's try and produce an appropriate level of evidence, but minimize cost and resources. So the suggested approach was, we've got the material data sheets, we can show the polymers and the various different materials that have some inherent biocompatibility. So we don't want to go through the process of doing finished product testing.
No, unfortunately, it doesn't work anymore because, because look, even if it's just variables that is not implantable and has direct contact with intact skin, even in this way, we have to consider, like, first of all, whole manufacturing process, and there is a way to justify that, okay, we don't have any additional residuals or any chemicals that can harm the patient, right? But here, and for variable, because from my experience, at least CITA is done even for the FDA, right? Because even if we are talking about polymers, it can be very different and can be some leachables from them and so on and so forth. And especially after cleaning and some manufacturing processes, it shall be assessed properly. But as you said, that it's partly, as you said, it's implantable, right? With quite long duration contact. So FDA right now, they focusing on final finished device. It means like the device in its very after manufacturing, if it's shall be sterilized, and it shall be sterile during assessment. What you can do like very deep analysis of all the materials, and surely material specification is a very good start and baseline, because here you may understand like what is actually the material, because there is no 100% of something, right? There is also some other chemicals, and material specification as well as safety data sheet usually are saying like, okay, there is 99% of material of chemical A as well as less than 1% of chemical B, and it shall be taken into consideration. Also, material specification is very good source of information whether this material is intended for use in a medical device or not. It's not a base, I would say, or like ground evidence, but it's like one more point in our, to be nice here within Biocomp. Because if it's not intended for medical device, some additional testing can be required actually, right? So, analyze their information, toxicological risk profile of all the materials, and post-market data, because if this device is available on the market for years, you can calculate complaints related to biological harms. You can calculate how many samples were sold during like 5 years, for instance, if you take like average shelf life, right? And understand what is the tendency, if there is actually. But I wouldn't go just with material specifications.
That's really helpful. So because I did hold the line, I think it's important to have a defensible position. But I think what I'm hearing then, and what I should take away, is that there's no ambiguity, certainly in the American market, that if you have a device that is in contact with the skin or in the skin, that you need to have some finished product biocompatibility testing on it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yep.
And that needs to be refreshed when you go through changes as well. Back to Carl's question.
Yep.
Okay, that's helpful.
And that's straight in the ISO document that she showed you, the 10993-1. It talks to that.
And FDA guidelines that was ISO 10003 was partly recognized by the FDA, right? And FDA guidance was created on based on this standard. I'm sorry, end of the day for me. And here within FDA guidance, because right now we are talking about American market, right? So within guidance, it's like very straightforward, very clearly transparent, indicated that all the assessment shall be performed on final finished good. If there are any changes, there are some tricks, here, for instance, if there is any change and we have already cleared medical device, we can do comparison to understand like, okay, not to test it like fully, but just to perform comparing testing to understand like, okay, what is the difference, whether there is any additional risk. But yeah, first of all, the medical device in final finished form shall be tested, and there is no exclusions here. Maybe not tested, but analyzed is the best word here, to understand like all the possible hazards that can appear from any situations.
Marina, before we continue, I want to say how much I'm appreciating you, because you are seeing the spirit of this group. I know you have some slides, but we're just
no,
a conversation with an expert.
Yeah.
Who calls herself an expert, which is rare, but that means you really, really are. Ginger, you hopped on specifically.
Yeah, so did you say that they blow into this thing? Is that correct?
Yeah, I did. So well, I mean, a couple of devices that spring into mind. But the it was effectively a breathalyzer, so it was kind of in the mouth for a short period. So there was a sterile barrier that was put over over the kind of the more stable device.
Oh, okay. So you have something else. I just to me that would say intact skin. That would say mucous membrane contact versus intact skin.
Yeah.
But I certainly think kind of on the 3 or 4 occasions where stuff like this has crossed my desk, then there's been a reasonable amount of pressure to try and take the path of least resistance and rely on some of the material specifications rather than go for finished product testing in an EU or a UK market. So that's really helpful.
No, you're most welcome. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, but as I said, you may use post-market surveillance data, right? As I said, complaints, also think, and also literature review, because I saw from time to time that there are some articles, white papers that are available for very similar devices. And also what is great to use MAUDE database, if you know it, it's for FDA actually, because all the manufacturers shall if something goes wrong, they shall make FDA aware, and all these adverse reports are collected within MAUDE database. I can put the link within the chat, or I don't know, maybe send it to Joe so he can share it to everyone. Yeah, like this. But as I said, it's like for 100% in final finished form, and unfortunately, yeah. But as I said, one more time, there are some tricks how to play with it, but it shall be for final finished medical device only. Yeah.
Paul, you had something?
Yeah, yes, I did. Marina, thank you for opening this door. I did not know this was a domain.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in the supply chain space, and one of my clients is an FDA registered facility for product assembly here in the US and warehousing and fulfillment. So I work a lot, I come across a lot of early stage companies, wearables as an example, you know, stage 2, class 2 type products. When I talk to those early stage people that are on the design thing, is there a pre-approved or a list of products that, you know, I know that the regulations I've heard, like in Japan, are very different. Things that are have toxicity are allowed in the US that are not allowed in other countries, as an example. I don't know the details. I just know that as a thing. But is there a list of products? If I say, hey, I'm an early stage company, I want to come up with a product. It's hypothetically a wearable. It's on the it's all these sensors now. It's touching the skin. Is there like 15 products that I know, material that I know historically has worked? Or how does the early stage company even attempt to figure who's making those choices? Are there resources they can go to?
Yeah, it's even you can't even imagine what Pandora box you just opened, because with ISO 10993-1 updates, I have version from December, and I know that Tokyo in last March in Tokyo they were discussing this. So the committee has put even additional consideration on it. So right now, not right now, but when and if these updates will be published in new ISO 10993-1 in this year, safety assessment shall be performed for prototyping phase. What it means actually? It means that no like whole biological evaluation shall be done for just prototyping, because we all know this waterfall model, right? How medical device usually are developed, right? But prototyping is very, very initial phase when we are just looking into the design to make it user friendly, when we are picking different materials and see and trying to see like how they work, you know, like very beginning. So, and according to what was proposed and updates to this -1, the safety assessment shall be performed for their materials. It means that cross-functional team shall sit together. I mean, like R&D, people who are like subject matter experts in materials of science, together with biocomp people and even clinical people, right, and discuss. And here, actually, I could see the challenge, because from one hand, there are some materials that are known to be used in the medical device industry for centuries, as for instance, stainless steel or polypropylene. It's like inert, and you know there are some materials that by default are used, for instance, stainless steel for surgical instruments like scissors, like retractors, you know, different.
But that doesn't leave any room for innovation.
Yes, exactly. And it was actually my point, because I was like, look, if we have novel material, how can we then spur the innovation? Because people, R&D people by default, engineers will pick these materials that are already used just to escape the additional testing, additional spends, and so on and so forth. But the beauty or naughty, you know, that depends. Beauty
this is where the naughty and the nice comes in.
Yeah, exactly. That look, when we have material and we suspect that it can be toxic, or there can be some leachables that can be derived from this material, in our safety assessment, we shall put like, okay, here are the benefits of this material, but also there are like challenges or points to consider biological effects, like it's called right now in updated ISO 10931, right? That shall be considered like in biological evaluation, like on further steps, on later steps, you know? So we have to point, it's like, look, we have potential concerns regarding this. Because I know, especially in wound care, when we are talking about different adhesives, there are quite a lot of innovations and novel materials. Also, plus take into consideration a quite new, let me put it in this way, manufacturing processes like 3D printing. And altogether, it shall be assessed as much as it could be in safety.
So this assessment though, right? This assessment is, for me, is another rabbit hole. I mean, because I'm considering what the questions they ask me or we help is with sourcing, right? So if we come up at the prototype, we use one material and they say, oh, this is a good material, you know, it seems to be working. Then they're going to come to somebody in my supply chain team and we're going to say, okay, which country can we get this product from? Right?
Sir.
Nicholas here on this call, he's bringing products in from Taiwan, right? Is Taiwan a good place? They have quality controls? Is China better? Is India better? Is Thailand better? I had a device that was entirely designed, built, and shipped out of Estonia, and I was blown away. I did not know that Estonia had a supply chain infrastructure to support the production of such a complex product. Same thing happened out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. I was shocked. They're not touching India then for the electronics or China for the electronics, nothing. Everything out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. So my point is, when the material, I think when you decide this, we're going to use a material, they also have to think about where's it coming from and the country of origin of the component for that material. Do they have the standards that are respected by, in the US, the FDA, as an example? Right, so that's why I'm saying, hey, is there a shorter list? If the answer is no, there's no list. But I'm assuming other than polypropylene, if I said that right, in stainless steel, there's got to be, there's two. Now,
no. There are a bit more. And for instance, FDA guidance that was updated last September, they have this annex where they list the materials that have direct contact with intact skin only. They can, their testing can be eliminated, and literature review as well as review in manufacturing processes. With these evaluations, we can go for submission here, right? But when we are talking about medical devices that have some other contacts with tissue, breached skin, for instance, or with blood or whatsoever, right? So the materials shall be assessed properly here. Like, as I said, one more time, manufacturing processes shall be taken into consideration, including sterilization, if the medical device shall be sterile. So as I said in the very beginning, we can say that polypropylene is like answer to all the medical devices. No, that doesn't work. We have to consider all the aspects here. Unfortunately, or fortunately, not so nice. You're the judge.
Naughty.
I would
it's agree. Not easy. It's not. That's a naughty one for sure.
I would agree here because
No, thank you.
The questions keep coming. I wonder, Michelle, let's hear what you have to say, and then perhaps we'll go back to the slides just long enough for you to point out some things that you really wanted to convey today. Michelle.
Okay.
So Marina, I've got two questions.
Oh, come on. I just said, all right, go ahead.
Okay. The first one is like, what are your recommendations, given that the FDA has, issued the letter to industry about all the fraudulent data coming out of China? What are your recommendations for people to pick, how they should pick or qualify a lab?
Oh, that's a very nice question, because if we are talking about the FDA, they are requesting two things. First one is that the lab itself shall be GLP certified, right? But also the test they perform, they do for the customers shall be also GLP. That's interesting, because lab shall be GLP certified, as well as the test shall be GLP validated, like properly. It's first one. So it means if we are talking about American market, we have to consider these things and surely double check and perform a lab audit.
So, Marina, should people ask for like a certificate? Like, I know the lab will have a certificate, and then will the scope of that certificate call out which tests specifically?
That's what you mean, because labs are
Mhm.
not GLP certified, and maybe unless you're over in OECD or other countries, but US labs are not certified. FDA does not certify them.
That's interesting, because I saw like GLP certified lab as well as certification on ISO 17485, if I'm not mistaken, on good laboratory practice.
But there's a lot of people say, I want to see your FDA certification. The lab
Oh,
is,
really? I
and
see.
that does not, I worked in a GLP lab as QA director.
Oh.
I think she's talking about something more along the lines of like a registrar.
17025,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
OECD in Europe, you can get GLP certification from agencies. You can't get that from the FDA. So just be careful on what you say that certification is.
Yeah, no, thank you. And another point is, to request these certificates, because I also recommend, if I'm asked by the customer, to request these certificates and double check like what test, whether the test is validated, whether it's certified on GLP, all these aspects. Then next, if possible to, if you, I don't know, if there is a corporation and you are working together with the lab, is definitely worth performing the lab audit, like to go and to see actually how their tests are performed, whether like whether they are following the instructions, because when it's GLP, it means like you have very proper instruction, what to do, how to do, like all these things. Another point to consider here is, it's very important actually to me, some labs have are working with specific set of medical devices, like for instance intravascular catheters, and they tested them like in 1,000. It means that they will have proper proper databases. They have experience working literally daily with this, and it also means that if something goes wrong, they can help to understand, like, to investigate, because they saw some shit. I'm sorry, out of recording. So and for instance, it's also worth asking, because I'm also asking labs like what are their direction from, like what medical devices they tested more. It's important. I would say I would list this points for consideration.
Marina, this has been the most interactive conversation we've had in a long time. So it's clear to me we have to have you back. And even though it's almost 6 p.m. where you are, if you're not a heavy drinker on Friday nights and you want to join us,
I will later.
You could go ahead and get started.
Luke routinely starts drinking before the call, and maybe he has to lift his beer for us. You have anything?
No, I had a coffee right now.
Okay.
If
you would kindly put your screen back on and maybe just show us the slide or two that you wanted to convey.
Absolutely.
But yes, you're already invited back. And,
thank you,
perhaps
sir.
in a month or two, because
I can give you a whole bunch of packaging problems with biocompatibility. You can use as specific examples too if you want sometime.
Oh, that would be great, actually. Let me share. So hopefully you can see, you can see my presentation, and like really very briefly for risk management framework. I put it in this way because I recently talked with one guy, and he's really, I like this talk because he's subject matter expert in the risk management process, and he made me think about, like, what does risk-based approach mean for everyone, because different people can interpret it in very different ways. So in terms of biocompatibility, it's my personal opinion from what I got reading the ISO 10993-1, as well as knowing ISO 4971 regarding risk management. So how to put biological evaluation into this framework? First of all, plan. That's why we have biological evaluation plan, like a separate document. Also, we need to identify and mitigate hazards, risks, and benefits associated with the target medical device, again in the term of biological safety. Because we don't need to perform full risk management process, but just focus on their biological safety. And by saying this, I mean toxicological profile, for instance. And I like -19. It talks about topographical physical characteristic of the device. And actually, I noticed that there is also a bit focus on this in a newly updated ISO 10993-1, because just imagine, very quick example, intravascular catheter, and it doesn't have smooth enough surface. So what will occur here, right? There will be some damage with the vessel, and so it's just biological risk we have to consider here. And third point here is to conduct gap assessments whenever your evaluation landscape changes, and it's very challenging and naughty part for me, because when we have change, we have to re-review our biological evaluation to understand whether there are any changes in the standards, and that's why we have to assess whether our previous results are still applicable and still appropriate for our evaluation, and also, yeah, I would say, and whether there is any additional information available in the regulatory landscape. And here I am talking about CMR, carcinogenic, mutagenic, and toxic to reproduction chemicals, as well as endocrine disruptors. I do believe that everyone knows the story about cobalt, and if you are interested, I can dedicate whole session actually talking about cobalt in stainless steel and how it changed the industry actually. Such kind of things, and different white papers and articles, because I like this aspect of biocompatibility because it's evolving, it's changing, and there are some additional studies that can be taken into consideration to mitigate risks. And yeah, actually here I had a list of naughty or nice to discuss with you, so just really briefly. Material property versus biological response. I talked about it earlier, that, for instance, the same material may be safe or unsafe depending on the manufacturing processes and depending on the biological response. That's why it's a system, and it's nice aspect for me, because it's never routine or boring for me, because each case shall be assessed separately and all the factors shall be taken into consideration. Next point here is the sources of data, because I'm usually working with a lot of documentation, because just imagine all the material specifications, technical data sheet, safety data sheet, manufacturing workflows, all their work instructions, for instance, if any clinical process is mentioned here, or validation documentation for instance, for packaging and sterilization. I am having a look into it because I need to understand the residuals and whether the process is stable here, and so on and so forth. And I even don't start talking about external sources of data and about toxicological profile of different chemicals. Next point is also interviewer shall have proper qualification, and there are no many trainings or webinars on biocompatibility, and ISO 10993-1 is very transparent and requesting actually to have proper qualification to be able to make conclusions and analyze the data. That's why this discussion be within community, to use the change to use the chance to join, for instance, FDA webinars, or recently it was regarding USP, material mediated pyrogenicity. So it's very interesting, and don't lose this chance and just attend. Post-market data usage, and it can be also be naughty or nice, and it's up to us to decide, because all this theoretical evaluation and even testing on the animals and in vitro, it's okay, but our medical device is used in real clinical use on the patient, and that's why post-market data is very important. It shall be gathered and analyzed, and we have to understand whether there are any trends regarding biological hazards here. Then biological relation report is living document. It means that it shall be revised and updated when it's applicable. Regulatory challenges, as I said, -1 is bringing quite a lot of changes. So I'm very curious how it would be implemented for all these companies, for all the medical devices. Biological test here, I wanted to talk about 3R principle regarding reduce, reuse, and replace. And there are quite a lot of investigations and studies that are currently in process of developing to replace animal testing with some in vitro testing. And innovation, actually, we already talked a bit about it. that naughty or nice, how should be here, like for innovation taking in consideration the cost of it or not, or just use traditional materials that are well known with traditional manufacturing processes. Actually, that's it. I'm sorry we are running late. 1 minute.
No, it's all good. We're not running late. And I've shared your LinkedIn and your website on.
Thank you.
You have more than 10,000 followers, which I rarely see. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Your website is vague as to whether you work alone or you are in fact part of a group.
Actually, the company I'm working for is called Intrinsic Medical Group, or IMG to make it shorter, and I am a biocompatibility consultant here. And we have several experts who provide different services, starting from biological relation to from scratch till setting up their process, for instance, writing SOPs, training people, so on and so forth, and also services regarding sterilization, validation, cleaning, reusable device, because reusable devices, it's another rabbit hole, you know.
Right. In fact, that may be a topic, and Rick wants to have you do a Cobalt demo, so you can come on every week, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Not next one. I
No,
will be
that
on
sounded really
MedTech.
amazing.
Next week, we're going to have a manufacturer who's entering or aspires to enter the market with an antimicrobial for wound cleaning. And the following week, Sean will teach us a thing or two about how he's using AI in helping
That's
his
great.
clients with their marketing strategies. So Marina, please come as often as you can. When in Poland, visit her. And I'll see you all next week. Again, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining in. Enjoy your Friday. Bye.